Two police officers, symbolizing law enforcement, arrived at my garage in their patrol car. I discreetly observed them from my hiding place under the lift. Their initial cheerful demeanor shifted to seriousness as they approached me. They conveyed the unfortunate news of an incident involving my wife at our home, leading to her hospitalization. However, they lacked further details. Attempting to leave, I was stopped by the officers, who asked about my whereabouts for the past 3 hours. I explained that I had been at the garage all day, corroborated by my mechanics, though I did briefly leave around 11 a.m. for coffee. One officer engaged my mechanics in conversation while the other took note of the coffee shop I visited. They then inspected my vehicle before allowing me to proceed to the hospital. At the hospital, staff briefed me on my wife's injuries, including a blood transfusion and surgery. I found the doctor's constant half-smile unprofessional. Leaving the hospital, I encountered the officers again, who suggested coffee in the cafeteria. They inquired about my relationship with my wife, to which I explained our late marriage, her successful legal career, and her recent resignation to prepare for motherhood. They questioned why she was home on a weekday, and I explained her pre-pregnancy break before focusing on domestic responsibilities. I expressed our love and anticipation for our upcoming baby. Someone approached me, asking if I knew a John Barton. When I replied that I didn't and inquired why they were asking, they evaded the question and walked away. Trusting my team to handle the garage, I headed straight home, where I found 2 forensic scientists and a detective searching the house. The detective introduced himself and explained what he knew. He asked the same questions as the previous officers, plus an additional one. Can you explain why we found a few drops of blood in the downstairs toilet, sir? I responded, I'm sorry, detective, but I have no idea. Now may I ask something? It seems I'm being treated as a suspect. Can you assure me that you're not solely focusing on me, but are also actively seeking the true culprit? He assured me, Brett, you can rest assured we have multiple lines of inquiry. My colleague is currently speaking with Mrs. Barton. Who is this John Barton that keeps being mentioned? The detective replied, I apologize, sir, but I believe it would be inappropriate for me to comment, and then he and the CSIs left, leaving me bewildered. I went up to the master bedroom and surveyed the scene as if witnessing it for the first time. Earlier that day, around 10 a.m., I would have been shocked. While at work, thoughts of sex started occupying my mind. This isn't uncommon. It said men think about sex an average of 67 times per waking hour. Men deprived of intimacy with their wives for a month can easily double that frequency. Since Kate left her job, our intimate encounters, which used to happen 2 to 3 times a week, had dwindled to nearly zero. Kate seemed to be in a constant state of bad mood, boredom, or depression, or perhaps just exhaustion. I believed it was because she realized her previous way of life was ending. As a considerate spouse, I refrained from pressuring her, knowing she would overcome her fears in due time. I anticipated that having children would change my life, but I understood it would completely upend hers. I often daydreamed about the passionate intimacy we shared early in our marriage. It was spontaneous and exhilarating, no matter the time or place. However, as time passed, we fell into a routine common among long-term partners. Snapping out of my reverie, I realized what needed to be done: reintroduce spontaneity into our relationship. I decided to go home immediately and engage in passionate lovemaking with Kate until we were both exhausted. The decision was made. It was time to leave. Before departing, I informed my friend Pete McKinn that I would be away for a while. Pete asked if I could test drive the car he had just finished servicing. Upon my return, I was disappointed to see an unfamiliar vehicle parked in the driveway, seemingly ruining my plans with an unexpected visit. Nevertheless, I resolved to enter the house, hoping to convince my friend to leave and salvage my intentions. Without suspicion or concealment, I opened the front door. Instantly, a chill ran down my spine, and I knew my marriage had come to an end. The unmistakable sounds of passionate lovemaking filled the house. Instinctively, I reached for my phone and began recording a video. This had become a habit whenever a client brought their car to the garage to avoid false damage claims. With my heart pounding, I ascended the stairs and cautiously peered through the bedroom door, camera ready. To my dismay, it was indeed Kate, but with a man I didn't recognize. Overwhelmed with anger and sadness, I resisted the urge to burst into the room and confront them. This was the most difficult moment of my life. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the floor just outside the door, utterly devastated. I was vaguely aware of their actions reaching a climax just around the corner. Uncertain of how long I had been there, it gradually dawned on me that the sounds of their affair had ceased, leaving only hushed conversations. The pain cut just as deep as before. Realizing I needed to distance myself to gather my thoughts, I knew any impulsive reaction driven by my emotions would result in him being hospitalized and me ending up in prison. At the very least, I needed time to think. Silently rising from the floor, I crept downstairs and settled onto the sofa, away from the sights, smells, and most of the sounds of their betrayal. Freeing myself from emotional distractions, I relied on my instincts and devised a plan. I had to remove him from the room and out of sight. I would confront him, ensuring minimal visible injuries by targeting his stomach. Then, I would forcefully eject him through the back door, completely exposed. Afterward, I would return for her and do the same. This would send a clear message and grant me the freedom I sought. I wanted to avoid a trial without leaving any physical evidence or witnesses. Fortunately, I had the perfect weapon in my workshop to shock them both. 2 years ago, while serving in the Army Reserve National Guard, I was tasked with clearing the trucks we brought back to base. During this time, I stumbled upon a small device that would now prove useful. The police called it a stern grenade. Slightly larger than a standard grenade, these devices were designed for hostage rescues, causing minimal physical harm while emitting a blinding flash of 8 million candles and a deafening sound of 170 dB. The flash alone could incapacitate a person for at least 5 seconds. Driven by my newfound hatred, my mind quickly formulated the rest of the plan. I didn't want to damage my house, so throwing a grenade on the floor was out of the question. Instead, I devised a different plan. I attached a short piece of rope to the device and created a loop at the end. With my preparations complete, I quietly made my way upstairs. As I approached, I realized that maintaining secrecy was no longer necessary. The unmistakable sounds of men's moans emanated from behind the bedroom door. I paused briefly to retrieve my phone from where I had dropped it outside the door. Peeking around the doorframe, I discovered that the second round of intimacy was in full swing. My wife was pleasuring her lover. Mentally rehearsing my intended actions, I took a deep breath and proceeded. Stepping into the room, I looped the end of the rope around the hook on the bottom of the light fixture, allowing the device to hang halfway to the floor. I removed the pin and discreetly placed it in my pocket before exiting the room. Outside, I tightly pressed my fingers to my ears, closed my eyes, and braced myself. Despite the precautions, the impact was astonishing. Even through closed eyelids, I could feel the shockwave and see the bright light reflecting. Following the plan, I re-entered the room, prepared for the aftermath. However, what I encountered was far from what I had anticipated. Mr. Anonymous lay on the bed, his manhood visibly damaged. Either nature had been unkind to him, or something was missing. Meanwhile, Kate lay on the floor, her eyes vacant, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Confused and taken aback, I retreated to the hallway to gather my thoughts. Suddenly, 2 piercing screams erupted from the bedroom, accompanied by loud crashes and slamming doors. It became clear I was in serious trouble. My plan had failed. Cautiously peering around the doorframe, I witnessed the chaotic aftermath. The man had rolled off the bed and curled up on the floor, clutching his groin and shrieking like a banshee. Kate was nowhere to be found, likely inside the bathroom. I needed to eliminate any evidence. Returning to the room, I quickly located the detonator mechanism for the device and attached it to the rope. Finding nothing else, I concluded everything else had been destroyed. Cautiously, I approached the bathroom. Kate was on her knees, vomiting into the toilet. I had no inclination to assist her, I simply no longer cared. On my way out, I noticed something on the floor, a piece of flesh, warm and soft, resembling the tip of a tongue. As I headed to the front door, I stopped by the first-floor toilet and flushed it. There would be no way to reattach it. Careful not to screech the tires, I drove down the street, grateful that our neighboring houses were far away. Halfway to the garage, I emptied my pockets into a roadside trash can. 10 minutes later, I returned to the small garage where I worked. I called Pete and Mike, two oil-stained individuals who were both employees and friends. They rushed over, sensing my alarm. "Guys, I need you to provide an alibi for the past 45 minutes, I said. "What do you say?" Almost simultaneously, they responded, "Of course, boss." "Before you agree, I must inform you that what I've done is very serious," I cautioned. "Once I explain, you may not be as quick to answer. I might face charges that could result in imprisonment." Before elaborating, I entered my office and put on my worn-out overalls. I retrieved an oily rag from the trash can and rubbed it on my face and hands. I didn't know when the police would arrive, but I anticipated their presence. The guys looked at me with a hint of astonishment. I briefly recounted the recent events to them. Mike was the first to crack, attempting to hold on for a solid 15 seconds before bursting into laughter. This broke the tension for Pete, who soon joined Mike and me in uncontrollable fits of laughter. It took a full 5 minutes before we regained our composure, and with firm handshakes and sincere promises of support, they returned to their greasy engine compartments. Over the next hour, spontaneous laughter echoed from various grimy chambers. My wife, Kate, was on the verge of reaping the well-deserved consequences for her infidelity and distance from my humble acquaintances in the past. That evening, I was tidying up the master bedroom. I had just finished cleaning the bathroom floor. I decided to discard the bedding and made a mental note to buy a new rug for the bedroom. The tattered curtains would also need replacing. I tried to keep myself occupied, avoiding contemplation. This was difficult with the incessant phone calls and persistent knocking on the door. The media was in a frenzy, eager for their next story. Infidelity combined with a man losing his manhood was a sensational tale for them. I opened the door once and promptly turned off the phone. Finally, with no distractions, I began to introspect. Did I regret my actions? Strangely enough, no. I despised cheaters with a burning passion. I had witnessed too many men transform into shadows of themselves upon discovering their partner's infidelity. The ironic thing was that even before lunchtime, I would have bet my life on the fact that my wife shared this same fervor. I was dumbfounded by how wrong I was, not to mention completely taken aback by Kate's motives. She appeared to be just as devoted to me as I was to her, and our intimate life had been absolutely blissful, well, until recently, that is. After several hours of internal turmoil, I could only find one solitary clue. I recalled how my hair stood on end 2 months ago when Kate announced her retirement to enjoy her last moments of freedom. I had expected her to continue working until at least the 7th month of her pregnancy. There was something peculiar about her desire for one last hurrah before starting a family. My thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of my personal cell phone. Very few people knew this number. The caller ID displayed Kate's parents' number. They resided in the same state, albeit about 3 hours away. I always had a great relationship with them, so I answered. After skipping the usual pleasantries, her mother got straight to the point. "Dave, what's happening? Do you know why there are so many journalists around our house?" I couldn't bring myself to go into detail. "Mom, did you watch the local news tonight? Maybe the main news? What about that scandal involving a woman who humiliated her lover?" I always appreciated her mom's colorful language and unique perspective on life, but it certainly didn't make our conversation any easier. "Yes, Mom. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. The woman's name is Kate." Fortunately, my confusion was interrupted by a loud scream, followed by a beep when I pressed the end call button on my phone. I noticed a warning on the screen. It reminded me that I had just finalized the end of my marriage 8 hours ago. I vaguely remembered leaving my phone recording outside my bedroom door. I knew that if I never understood why Kate did what she did, I would struggle to trust any woman again. There was a strong possibility that I would become a lonely misogynist condemned to a life of insignificance. With desperate hope, I started playing the video. I already knew what it would show. The pain was still too raw to relive the scene. I opened my eyes just as I placed the phone on the floor. Without a visual representation, only a view of the hallway ceiling, I had to imagine Mr. and Mrs. Adultery lying side by side on the bed. I couldn't clearly hear the conversation, so I downloaded the file onto my computer and amplified the sound. This was a crucial part of their discussion. Wow, Kate, it was amazing. This past week has been incredible. Actually, does it really have to end today? My offer still stands. Just give me your word, and I'll divorce Sarah and marry you. Well, yes, it seems like it could work. A great way to start a marriage with a man who abandoned his wife and children? No, and I love Dave too much to hurt him like that. After today, I will become Mrs. Goody-Goody, a devoted homemaker until our youngest child begins school. It is evident that you do not love him as much as I do. The person lying beside you is not him. No, you are mistaken. I deeply love him. From the moment I laid eyes on him, I knew he was my one true soulmate. I will never encounter another like him. Our physical connection is incredibly strong. I am grateful to have such a wonderful man who pampers me and will care for me when I bear his 2 or 3 children. My only desire is to pass away in his embrace, surrounded by our grandchildren. That was quite an impressive speech, but it raises an obvious question: why are you with me now? At least Kate had the decency to ponder over it. There was a prolonged silence for about 30 seconds. I suppose I simply longed for the past. I didn't marry until I turned 31 and used to be quite adventurous. I missed the thrill of walking into a bar and attracting attention from various men, the excitement of leading someone on, and then impulsively deciding whether to fulfill their desires or not. Recently, Dave has been going deer hunting with his friends every other weekend. 3 weekends ago, I decided to revisit my past and visit a bar. It resulted in a night that was mediocre and unsatisfying. Then last Saturday, I coincidentally walked into the bar where you were, and here we are. Kate, you seem so distant. Let us consider this our final fling. Regardless, why are you complaining? Come closer. I stated that it had to end today. I did not specify that it had to end immediately. I muted the sound. At least now I know that I am a skilled lover and a devoted husband. The issue does not lie with me. The subsequent days passed with utter disappointment. 2 days later, the journalists disbanded and departed from my tranquil street. The hospital administrator contacted me and informed me that Kate would appreciate some pajamas. I neglected to bring them along. She will have to endure those humiliating hospital gowns. 2 days later, her father reached out to me. He expressed his apologies for his daughter's behavior and expressed his desire for me to maintain contact with him in order to improve the situation. He reminded me that he has another daughter who recently went through a divorce. Regrettably, Father, I find this situation too peculiar. 4 days later, he appeared on the news once again. Mr. Not-So-Big-Dick had been discharged from the hospital. Journalists had uncovered some information and exposed him as a habitual cheater. Therefore, it was with some satisfaction that they announced that although the surgeons had successfully reattached his manhood, it was highly unlikely to function as intended. Towards the end of that week, an unexpected visitor arrived. Mrs. Barton, or Sarah as she insisted I call her, was an attractive woman with sorrowful eyes. She informed me that she had heard rumors suggesting that I possessed evidence that could assist her in her divorce case. I explained that it might be true, but I couldn't admit it without incriminating myself. She understood the situation and apologized for asking. I reassured Sarah that there was ample circumstantial evidence and that she wouldn't need what I possessed. However, if it turned out I was mistaken, I promised to help her reconsider. Her profound sadness evoked sympathy within me. I retrieved the video file and played it for her, showing only the aftermath of the significant explosion. Initially, the sound of her husband's scream startled her, but she quickly composed herself. It is safe to say that she did not appear very sorrowful when she left. Being the helpful person that I am, I offered her the opportunity to pick me up when her sadness resurfaced. Oh yes, that was not the last time I encountered Sarah Barton. The final visitor I received was perhaps the most peculiar. On Saturday, I opened the door to find the detective I had spoken to at the house on the day of the significant event. He was no longer wearing a suit but instead jeans and a shirt. "Hey, son, I won't come in," he said. "I just wanted to inform you that if there is insufficient evidence, I have recommended closing the case." Kate's letter was delivered to me the following Tuesday. In her letter, she expressed her deep remorse and apologized for the pain she caused me. She understood why I couldn't bring myself to visit her and offered her unconditional forgiveness. Kate admitted that she never fully considered the potential consequences of her actions and never anticipated that her parents would disown her. She acknowledged that she had lost my love, trust, and respect forever, which deeply saddened her. Kate mentioned that she would understand if I chose to never speak to her again, but believed that it might aid in my healing process if she explained her motivation. She emphasized that she took full responsibility for her actions. According to the doctors, it seems that I may not be able to speak normally for a significant period of time, if at all. They suspect that I may have accidentally swallowed the tip of my tongue when I bit it off. They have informed me about an experimental stretching technique that could potentially restore some functionality. I am hopeful that this treatment will be successful as it would allow me to resume my career and provide a distraction from the bleak and loveless future I currently face. In the event of our divorce, I am willing to agree to any terms you desire and will sign any necessary documents on the condition that you keep me on your health insurance for the foreseeable future. I would be eternally grateful for this gesture. In conclusion, I bid you farewell, my love. I sincerely wish you nothing but happiness in the days to come. I hope that my actions have not completely shattered your life. With love, Kate, also known as your unfaithful wife. I must admit that her letter deeply moved me, prompting me to reconsider my previous decision. As a result, I promptly sent her pajamas to the hospital along with the contact information for Mick and Pete. I wonder if I owe them a beer or perhaps even a keg each. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Write your opinion in the comments.